Quite recently I was lucky enough to ride the legendary Diplomat, popularly called 560 cell. I was just delighted. Gorgeous smoothness, very good dynamics for a Colossus 516 centimeters long and just imbued with the era of the group's troops on Vincent. So, the 126th flanking performance compared to May 190 and the Turkish seems to be just gigantic. Even by today's standards, this is a very large car. However, even in the mid-80s there were comrades for whom even the size of such mastodons was not enough. Apparently they got American ones a year. It was for them that the Stalin Garage Company also created a version of the 126th with the beautiful name Ro. The main feature was not a banal lengthening of the body, although the length of the base could grow by 30, even 120 centimeters. And here you will really be surprised by the increase in width too. Yes, you heard right about the width of the car. If, for example, the factory 560, this parameter was equal to centimeters, then the brainchild could boast of its width. Just think about 2 meters 2 centimeters in the photo of the flagship, and a very large 126 next to the version turns into a small little car. Interestingly, the stuffed Orwell was at the maximum. These apartments on wheels could boast of minibev's slender armrest, foldable with a music installation and lecture control panel, armchairs, a TV and, apparently, a tape recorder, folding tables with expensive wood trim, and some versions also have 3 full-fledged armchairs instead of the usual back sofa. And a trip on this option turned into a sheer pleasure, because the masters from a gesture in the second half of the 80s could install under the hood another 6-liter with a capacity of 385 horsepower from the same legendary Camry in the 125th body, which I have already mentioned more than once. The goal of money for a car at such an energy point reached just a fabulous 600,000 marks, just mere pennies for some Bill Gates. The second car, which I will now tell you about, amazed me even more. This time it's an urban development. We all know that in the early 90s the legendary 140th modification of 600 villages of an ordinary person from our country was the real king among the representatives of these cars. This schoolboy was then only frightened in view of the passionate love of our committee, who, in the 40th, although not only ours, the same Japanese mafia just like crazy redeemed the 140th, considered it simply a great prestige to drive around the 600 with the left-hand drive for people who understand that the index of 600 villages meant that, firstly, they had an apparatus sizes, and, secondly, under the hood of a 12-cylinder heart with 48 valves from an honest volume of 6 liters and horsepower. Yes, of course, 12 motors were then far away, giving 120 partly recoil. But the most amazing thing is that the ultra-powerful at the time 600 and could then overshadow the modification of 800 villages. It sounds like it is truly threatening. The fact is that initially at the end to turn into a real monument of engineering art, in particular, a new version with a motor of more than 16 was structurally very similar to the same famous 1220, however, the presence of additional 4 cylinders spoke for itself. The motor was simply formidable. And the most interesting thing is that at a time when 2 valves per cylinder, even 6-cylinder engines were considered the norm, this Leviathan with indexes of 160 boasts 4 paws on each of 16 cylinders in total. Their number reached amazing numbers of 64 with a volume of giant 8 liters of return reached horsepower, which was simply unthinkable for a family car, and competitors did not even dream of when the growth in comparison with the top in the previous class of 560 villages was 240 horsepower. Unfortunately, it is currently unknown. But it seems to me that he was in the region of 850 Newton meters, and this is the level of the newest 63 213 bodywork regarding dynamics. If, according to the test results earlier, the 600 coped with the first 100 in 6.3 of a second, then I dare to assume that 800 would easily fit in 5.5 seconds. If such a modification was born back in the 91st in terms of the dynamics of the 140th club, attacks not only absolutely any competitor of a representative class, but also almost any sports car, some modern models at the time in February and most in Poland. And most likely, after 150 km per hour, the Spanish would leave in circle 32. But history, as you know, does not tolerate the laxative mood. According to one information, only 35 prototypes were produced, which were tested quite successfully. However, the giants did not allow this to be put into production, according to one version of the environmental norm that had already begun then, and according to the other, the supposed one does not pay off in qualifications. And yes, by the way, at one time she also arranged a prototype of a 16-cylinder of a 7 in a 30 body. You can find out more about your last year's video, a link to it. I also left a description. Now let's move on to the last car, which I also admire and, I think, no less than the mandates of the Audi brand. Once I already talked about one creation of the office. Price. The suspect car today is just from under their pen. This time the guys didn't bother making a quirky kinship based on the original Equator. 200 just took it off and lengthened it by 27 whole centimeters in the area of the rear side windows. Long before the appearance of representatives of this model, there were 8. After these operations, the Audi 200 Varga in size became comparable to the 126th long format body. The length reached 508 centimeters, although the 126th was still 8 centimeters longer. In addition, the car was demolished with the original weight and the original fatalistic. The herring began to look like radishes. I'm not afraid of this word, attractive, and even a stylish salon is just a separate song. Just look at how much space in the second row here the 126th, 140th, and possibly even Maybach will envy. 222. The rear seats could be equipped with the electric drives. Additional equipment of the Audi 200 Varga included a TV, a video, a mini-BEV tape recorder, a sheet musical training from the now famous Harding Gordon, and even a telephone. The volume of the engine was slightly increased from 2.14 days to 2.3 of liters of return rose to 165 horsepower. There is information that there were 250 versions. Only 3. Cheese produced 30 copies of this, and the price of the Cannes version, that is, the alteration in the 85th year, reached thousands of marks. But if you are imbued with these videos and want something else like that, support it with varnish.